All right, people, Bitcoin pumped. We're above 28K now, 1,000 more than where we were before. Why did this happen? Well, the direct reason is because we liquidated $70 million in shorts. The indirect reason is because September, the bad red September, is over, and it wasn't really that red. So some people are saying Uptober is here. Well, not really sure if that's true or not because, if September was supposed to be bad and wasn't bad, just because October is supposed to be good doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Now, generally, the Q4 before the halving is good, and there's a specific reason for that. There's going to be pressure on the supply of Bitcoin coming in. Everyone is getting ready and bracing for the supply crunch that's actually coming because there will be half as much Bitcoin being mined after April. And the thing is, that's only about half a year away. So people are actually getting ready for that. The other reason is, institutions are actually looking to come in, and not only for Bitcoin, but also for Ethereum. Let's not forget the Ethereum futures just passed. And although I think that effect is very limited, it is probably an upward effect just for them getting past and new financial products entering the market. But remember, the other thing is the interest rates are still high. They're the same as they were the last couple of months, although we did pause in September. And I'm hoping we pause again in November. Gas prices are still high and housing hasn't come down. So, inflation is still there. So they're not bringing interest rates down, but I think people have gotten over that scare. And I think people are gearing up for the halving. So they are gearing up for a pumping price. But just because they expect it doesn't necessarily mean it's absolutely going to happen. Now, another reason is because of Grayscale, obviously. Grayscale, the decision is on October 13th. My guess is the SEC is going to focus on the custody and find another way to actually deny it. But that actually makes the SEC's decisions look a lot more arbitrary than they are, and that's not something they want because at that point it looks like they're just fishing for any random reason to deny the ETF, which I actually think that's probably the case, what they're doing anyways. But it will actually make him look even worse than that. It will make Gary Gensler look worse than he actually is. And that might cause some dissension in the SEC. Now, Gary Gensler can't really afford that much dissension on this ETF because he's only one of five. He is the head of the SEC, but he's only one of five commissioners. Hester Pierce has always been pro-Bitcoin ETF. And another person has actually joined her on the pro ETF side. So if Gary Gensler loses any more supporters, the SEC will actually approve the ETF. I'm not really sure what kind of backroom hand-wringing there is, but he's probably trying to gather people to his side. And Pierce and others have openly criticized Gary Gensler. So there's dissension within the own party. And just the fact that the Grayscale ETF might actually be approved on October 13th is probably enough to get some people hyped. Now, I think that it's probably a 50-50 whether it gets actually approved or not. And actually, it's probably not even 50% based on what the SEC has done recently. I mean, if the SEC were a reasonable organization, I think you would almost have a 100% chance of approval. But since Gary Gensler and the SEC, especially Gary Gensler, is not very reasonable, they might find any BS reason to actually deny it just because they don't want it approved. For whatever reason, they don't want it approved. So I think if the Grayscale thing gets pushed back, we might see a little bit of a dump, but not all that much. Because we are heading towards that halving, and I think it would actually pump up anyways towards that halving. Overall, I think the 4-year cycle is most likely going to hold. We might get a slow up towards 40 or 45,000 as we go towards the end of the year and as we get closer. Because remember, the ARK Invest deadline is still January 10th. And if they deny ARK Invest, they would have to deny all the ETFs. And Gary Gensler is going to have just a really hard time justifying that. In front of Congress and others. Remember, he goes in front of Congress again, I think October 6th or something, and he's going to have a very hard time answering questions because Congress is really bearing down on Gary Gensler, at least the House is, because the House is actually GOP-led. They're not throwing him easy ball questions. They're smacking him with every difficult question they actually got. So Gensler is facing like opposition. He's facing pressure from Congress. He's really trying to assert his authority over crypto, but it does not look like Congress really wants to help him assert any power over crypto. And like I think he might have been trying to rely on the government shutdown some, because that might actually close up some activities. But since that didn't actually happen, I think things are going to roll forward as usual. And I think some people in the know, or that have actually read the news, know this point is coming up, and that the SEC does not really have a good reason to actually deny Grayscale. Now, like I said, based on what they actually did, the fact that they delayed all those ETFs that quickly, it looks like they will find another BS reason to actually deny Grayscale. I don't think they're going to appeal the case, because there's very little chance they would actually win the case. It's another stall tactic, but it would be another black mark on the SEC's record if they actually lose. And I think people are optimistic, and people are definitely hoping that an ETF gets approved this month. I'm definitely hoping that an ETF gets approved this month. Although I think it's more not likely than it is likely, I think there is a decent chance. This might be like the best shot out of all the ETFs that we have, because it is actually a court order, and the SEC is going to have to decide by October 13th. So people are actually looking at that. People are actually looking at institutions basically coming into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like it's obvious that there's like demand out there, either for financial products that relate to crypto or to the crypto themselves. And people are thinking that, like it's almost guaranteed that we'll get one by March because of BlackRock and Fidelity, and the SEC is not going to deny all of those. I won't actually like say that they're not going to deny all of those. I don't think they will, but there's a chance that they actually might. But I think like some of these big companies like BlackRock and Fidelity are going to start buying Bitcoin somehow or other. If they can't do it by themselves, they'll probably like buy it off some like shell company or something and use it in their storage, because they will need Bitcoin to back up the reserves. And it'd be foolish to actually like buy your reserves once you let the projects open up, because then you have to buy them all in the spot market, which would be great for us, but not very great for BlackRock or Fidelity. And I don't think those companies are actually like that dumb to actually do that. I would actually fire my managers if they weren't actually accumulating Bitcoin right now in anticipation of an ETF approval. You don't have to, like, these big companies don't necessarily have to do it the completely legit way. I'm pretty sure if they acquired a bunch of Bitcoin and Ethereum right now, a couple of months before the ETF actually went live, I don't think anyone would really look into that. I think it's something that all of us suspect. And maybe during the next few months, you will actually see that kind of demand come into play, where BlackRock, Fidelity, ARK Invest, and a bunch of these others are actually secretly buying Bitcoin OTC, drying up OTC, and making that demand kind of spill over into the spot market. Now, since they're buying slowly, they might not actually pump it up to like, an all-time high or something, but I do think that kind of pressure can drive us to about $50,000 by the end of the year, if that theory holds true. Some of you are thinking that like they already bought their Bitcoin, and they might have already bought a bit, but I still think that there is some left for these investment companies to buy, and they're going to have to like buffer up until they actually release, because if they don't like buffer it until they actually release, they're gonna have to buy all of them at once at market price, and that's going to pull the price way up when that happens, and that's not very good for the company. So you got to think that there is actually upward pressure from these companies that actually are buying Bitcoin in anticipation of the ETF. Remember, this is a spot ETF. They're going to have one-to-one backing with Bitcoin for these ETF certificates that they issue to customers. And remember that article we actually read just a while ago that said there could be possibly $600 billion of latent Bitcoin demand that's going to get unlocked by the ETF. Just like in that video, I don't think it's going to be $600 billion. I think it's more likely to be $150 billion, maybe $200 billion, but that's still a lot of money pumping into Bitcoin, and $200 million coming in even over the course of a year will pump the Bitcoin price and market cap way more than $200 million, because as soon as some of those resistances are broken, there won't be any more resistances above. And if you want to buy in, you'll basically have to buy the price up. That's both true for retail and institution once they dry up that institutional market. I think there's a lot of factors coming in here, both foreign and domestic, that can make Q4 a really big boon, even Q1 next year a really, really big boon. It's all inspired by the halving, the legalities, the difficulty the SEC is actually facing, their court losses, and the possibility of a lot of people jumping into the ETF right now. So realistically, like Uptober, I think actually will be a thing. And of course, I think that will be followed by a good November and a good December, barring that Jerome Powell just goes crazy and like massively raises the rates in November, which I don't think he's actually going to do. I'm actually hoping the next two labor reports come out pretty bad, so he'll see that his policies are having a huge effect and he won't do any more. And I hope those inflation rates come down. I hope housing comes down. And I really hope energy starts coming down as well. If that all happens, you know, like this is going to start rolling much, much, much faster than we think. If they can get inflation down faster due to food and energy, that's going to, like, you know, put people off edge. And that can actually inspire them to actually invest in a couple of risky assets rather than just buy bonds like a lot of people are doing right now. So October is coming. It might be Uptober, and we might have an Upvember and Upsember as well. Let's just hope that actually happens, and we hope to get to like 40, 50,000 by the end of the year, if not even higher. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.